Hi, everyone. We're just going to give it about a minute or so.
While we're waiting, if people want to share where they're joining us from, feel free to do that in the chat. Love to see where we've got people coming from today. Well, I'm coming from Oregon, if you couldn't tell the duck in the background. Portland, Oregon. So be curious to hear where everyone's joining from. Feel free to share it in the chat. Oh, chat was disabled. Now it's enabled. There we go. Jacksonville, North Carolina. I didn't think I knew there was a Jacksonville there. Nice. Pasadena, California. I'd lived there at one point. Love Pasadena. Old town. Good place.
How long have you lived there, Lee?
I lived there for 2 years. Lived in LA for like 3 years, 4 years.
Nice.
No, LA for 10 years, longer. What am I
Oh,
saying?
wow.
I was in Pasadena area for a couple years though. Looks like people are saying the chat is disabled, it looks like, for that. Well, welcome everybody. Appreciate you joining.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and get started. Sorry about that. The chat's disabled. You can still drop your location in the Q&A box. We're going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn. I'm Lauren Smith with the International Franchise Association, and we have a great 30 minutes lined up for you. Before we begin, we just have a few housekeeping items. So the first is that we're recording today's webinar and we'll make it available later this evening on community.franchise.org. If you have any questions for today's speakers, please add them to the Q&A box and they'll be addressed toward the end. And finally, our sponsors have also provided their research report, which I will link in the chat. Today's topic is 25 calls equals 1 Google review. How to amplify happy customers and address hidden complaints through sentiment analysis, and is brought to us by Marchex. Here to provide today's discussion is Lee Barth, Vice President of Enterprise Sales at Marchex, and Alex Sharper, Data Analyst at Marchex. Thank you all for joining us today, and thank you to Marchex for sponsoring today's Lunch and Learn. I'll go ahead and turn things over to you.
Thank you, Lauren. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone, for all your time today. Much appreciated jumping on during lunchtime to learn more about the study that we did. We've got a lot of great information to share, so we're excited to get going with you guys. So we're going to kick things off with our first poll. What is your biggest challenge with Google reviews? And is it getting more reviews in general? Getting more positive reviews? Managing negative feedback? And we're going to give a couple of minutes seconds as everyone provides their answers. We don't have minutes for polls, but yeah, go ahead and enter in your choice and we'd love to see that now. Go ahead and provide the results. Let's see what we got going on poll number 1. All right, it looks like getting more reviews in general is a good topic for us, and then managing the negative feedback. Great. Thank you all for sharing that. That's awesome. All right, getting into the meat of it. So why this research is important. I think, we all know that Google reviews are critical for your business. Look, not just Google reviews while we're talking about that today, because that's what the study was built from, but Yelp, Angie's, any other platform where you have reviews that, your prospects or customers are engaging with, they're important. Certainly within Google, they leverage their algorithms to prioritize the recency and volume of the reviews that are happening, make it, critical for you guys to show up within those SEO results. So, making sure that you have more of that in there. And then, I think customer feedback is going to be so paramount for everybody. It's vital to your business and understanding what's happening. And so, whether that's with a Google review or something that you're learning before the Google review happens, or within any other platform, it's something you want to focus a lot on, as we even saw in our poll results. And then, there's also this correlation between, review scores and customer acquisition costs. Lower scores often require higher marketing spend to drive the same results. And then lastly, here's the kind of the bigger point in all of this. Google reviews can be a lagging indicator of what's actually happening. So, time has passed, they provide that review based on your business, and you're going to see that that's happening after the fact. And why don't we get ahead of that? And so that's what we're going to dig into a little bit today. Alex is going to take us through a lot of the findings. He's from our Mind Plus team, so they're intimately involved with a lot of this data and the paper that we put together. So take it away, Alex. Thanks.
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah. So what we can see here is, and again, that Lee just iterated over is things that we already know. A lot of these statistics, a lot of research has already been done on the type of impact that Google reviews have on a business's reputation and the reputation in the community. And I think a lot of this probably is representative of all of us here on the webinar today. 49% of people trust online reviews as much as a personal recommendation. I definitely trust the things that I read, people who have actually shopped with the business already. And probably another thing that goes for all of us, 94% that of people admit that a bad review has caused them to avoid a business. I know that that's also true of me. But perhaps some of the things that we're not all aware of, and this is from USA Today, only 5 to 10% of customers will actually post a review. They'll actually make their opinion publicly known. And that's really quite an eye-opener when you think about the fact that there's, about 90% of your customers aren't actually going online and saying how their experience was. And the impact of what that means, we know that those customers are still telling people. We know that they're still making their opinion known. They're still sharing how their experience went with other people. The question is just like, how do you even begin to understand the type of impact that that's having, and how do you access what that feedback is?
Yeah, and I think this is so critically important because, a lot of people probably share in their social platforms that they're on. Dissatisfied customers, do that and vent across their personal profiles and stuff that we'll never see as businesses. And that's a challenge. And so I think the idea that we want to kind of percolate here today is that silent dissatisfaction, and how do we uncover that, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so when you ask the question like, well, where are these other 90% of my customers sharing their opinions? Well, we can see here that dissatisfied customers, they'll share their experience with like 9 to 15 other people. And with happy people, people who had a good experience with your business, that's significantly less. They'll still share it, about 6 other individuals, but we can see how quickly negative experiences spread and get shared. These people are probably sharing with colleagues, with friends, with family, with neighbors. They're still making their experience known. They're just probably not taking it online. So here at Marchex, we wanted to kind of understand, how can we still unearth what that feedback is? How can we try to determine what these experiences are like and what these customer sentiments are, knowing that most of it actually isn't making its way to an online review site. And so that's why we commissioned this study, trying to see if maybe that feedback is located in your calls, in your interactions with your customers.
Yeah, there's a little bit of psychology in this, right? I mean, there may be an emotional barrier to sharing publicly. Like some people fear conflict, particularly negative feedback, and so I think that's something to keep an eye on. And then the other thing that we kind of need to be aware of these days is certainly older generations prefer more direct feedback. That's what we've seen.
Absolutely.
And while younger generations are leaning more towards online reviews and sharing, because there's a comfort level there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, so Marchex commissioned the study. We analyzed over 120,000 calls over a 6-month time period in the United States. We looked at home services businesses, 27 locations specifically, and these locations ranged from 200 calls a month all the way up to larger locations experiencing over 4,000 calls a month. So we had quite a diverse data set here, and we also had quite a representative data set. These locations specialized in things from painting services, appliance servicing, cleaning services, as well as, of course, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and the like. So we had a great representative data set of several locations to analyze, and we let's get into it. Yeah, so our findings, we found, this is huge in terms of the ratio, on average, these home services locations are experiencing, of course, about 25 calls for every single Google review that they received in the same time period. And probably more importantly, is when you look at actually what is in those Google reviews and what's in those phone calls. Well, the Google reviews actually kind of underreported the customer dissatisfaction by about 50%. And we'll get into that. And honestly, that's kind of good news for businesses, because what that means is that your customers are taking their dissatisfaction and their problems, their sentiments, and they're bringing them directly to you as opposed to putting them online in a review. And that allows you to act on them and allows you to make amends and make things right. So that's great for businesses. Moreover, customer sentiment varied quite drastically according to the subvertical or the industry that you're specializing in. We'll get into that and how you can use that to benchmark accurately. And we also found that home services businesses, ending on a good note, typically experience 10 to 25 times more positive conversations than negative ones. And that's a great opportunity, again, to try to identify the customers that you are satisfying and encouraging them to bolster, again, your online reputation, sharing, recommending your services to others. And that's great news and great opportunity for you.
Yeah, I think that part about Google reviews underreporting customer dissatisfaction by 50% is such a huge one that we're going to unpack as a part of this
Absolutely.
conversation later. How do you really unearth all of this information? One thing I do want to point out is if you do have questions along the way, feel free to pepper those in the Q&A section. We'll start taking a look at those along the way. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so starting out here, if we look across all 27 locations, you can see that on average, the USA Today report that we found earlier, how only 5 to 10% of customers leave a review, that really tracks with what we see here, because a location on average will get about 25 phone calls for every review that they receive online. And sometimes that varies all the way up to, you might be getting 55 or more calls per review that you receive online. And on the lowest end of the spectrum, it's still a 3-to-1 ratio. So we know that no matter where you are, it's just the truth that you are going to be receiving far more feedback. You're going to have way more insights and information to glean from your phone calls and your conversations with customers, as opposed to relying just on the online reviews that you're getting. And perhaps this is probably the meatiest slide in this deck, and I'll break it down because it's kind of busy right now. So Marchex's sentiment analysis product, Sentiment Suite, has an AI signal called View of the Business. And what View of the Business does is it looks at the whole conversation. It looks at it holistically from beginning to end, and it determines, upon the call's conclusion, would this customer be likely to recommend this business to friends or family, knowing how their experience went? And so if they would be a likely advocate of your business, we call that a positive view of the business. If they wouldn't recommend your business, or if they would recommend people against using your business, we would call that a negative view of your business. So what we decided to do is we took the average view of business rates, on average, how often do customers, are they proponents for your business? Are they advocating for it? As determined by our AI sentiment analysis. And then we pitted that rate against Google review rating, you can see on the x-axis. And unsurprisingly, you can see this trend. If you look at the fit line here that's taking into account these locations, you can see that generally the trend holds that as Google review rating increases, and all of these dots are representing a location, as Google review rating increases per location, positive view of business rate is also increasing, up until this cliff of about 4.7 stars. And what you'll notice is that we still have locations that are, remaining with a relationship of as increasing positive view of business. Google review rating also increases if you look at that top right corner. But you'll also see this cluster of locations in this highlighted box. And all of these locations, despite the fact that their Google review ratings online show this public, image of having really high 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 average star rating, we can see that the AI is detecting that for several of these locations, they're only having positive view of business with their customers during their calls about 50 to 55% of the time, way less often than you would expect just looking at the Google review ratings. And probably the biggest takeaway from this is that, and we know this because during the study, we found it's actually quite common to find home services businesses have these high average Google review ratings. It's not uncommon at all to see the 4.7, 4.8, 4.9 stars. But what we found is that the higher up you get in that Google review rating, the less you actually know about how, like, the less you can definitively say about your actual customer experience overall. Because you could be the location in the top right corner, and over 70% of your customers are walking away from their interactions with your business as brand advocates. But you could also be the location in the bottom right corner where you still have a 4.9 Google review rating, but less than 55% of your customers have a positive view of your business, and less than 55% of them are likely to recommend your business to a friend, family, colleague. That is, that's astronomical. That's incredible to think about how, like, you're kind of in this like black box, like you don't know where you are unless you're using a sentiment analysis tool to really analyze every single conversation. So that was huge discovery for us.
That's such an important point. I think, you can't rely on your public perception of those Google reviews. You really have to unearth other things that are happening even before people submit those reviews. And I think that's
Absolutely.
such a key point here. We also see across some of the organizations that we work with, there's a high level of gamification. Of course, they've got their systems in place where they're making sure that they're capitalizing on all the positive reviews, but also on the other side of that, conversely, what are they doing about the negative reviews? And I think that's so important.
Absolutely. And then, going on to like a broader perspective of this, you can see how drastically customer view of business, customer perception varies by the specific, industry specialization that you're in. We see that cleaning services, on average, 70% of customers calling in have that positive perception, and less than 3% have a negative one. But on the other end of the spectrum, in HVAC and plumbing services, oftentimes you see on average that's 10% less positive perception, and it's over double the negative perception on average. And really, when you think about why, and you kind of look at this just like from an objective point of view, I think we can all admit that seeing this is ordered in basis of like regularity and urgency. Cleaning services, anyone who has employs a cleaning service for their home, for their business, you look forward to that. That's a
Yeah,
scheduled
I do.
routine thing, and but whereas if your AC goes out and it's 100 degrees outside, no one's happy about that. No customer is a lot of people are really going through it when their house is flooding. And so this is really just serves as a really great informative piece to business owners and leaders to educate your agents and your CSRs. They should be aware of the fact that more often than not, you're going to be receiving calls from customers that are frustrated. They are having a bad day. But if you can educate your agents to empathize, our sentiment analysis shows that we can detect frustration. A customer calls frustrated, they're already in a bad mood, they're in a bad disposition. But our sentiment analysis has shown that the best businesses, the best agents are able to take that frustrated customer and leave them satisfied and with a positive view of your business because of the help that they were able to give, because they were able to, empathize and sympathize with them in that moment.
Yeah, I think what we're talking about here is emergency versus planned services. There's such a difference.
Absolutely.
You definitely need to be able to tailor your feedback mechanisms based on the type of emotional drivers that are common to your particular industry, right? I mean, I think
Absolutely.
that's so key. All right, moving on. Poll number 2. How do you currently monitor positive or negative feedback from customers? So this is multiple choice. Feel free to put in multiple answers here. Are you listening to calls? Are you reading the reviews? If you're listening to calls, and how much time are you spending listening to calls? Because you can leverage AI to do that these days and summarize and get really key data points, structured data points to be able to filter that stuff. Reading reviews is always going to be important from a reputation management standpoint. Conducting surveys, those are always great. Typically, we see you're able to get about a 30 to 40% response rate across the board. Are you employing some sort of automated scoring solution already? Are you leveraging AI or humans to do that automated scoring? Or do you need a better solution? Let's see the results of that. Interesting.
Wow.
Reading reviews is a huge one. So everyone takes those to heart, it looks like. And then
Mhm.
conducting surveys. So that's great. You're doing that. And then, yeah, it's pretty close between automated scoring and listening to calls.
Yeah.
I appreciate those of you who answered need a better solution. So appreciate that honesty there. Okay, I'm going to dive into a little bit of the customer journey, something that we all know a lot about, certainly as marketers. I think what's critical here is, reviews influence customer expectations even before the first interaction. It really shapes their perception of the quality of the service and the service that you're providing. I think it's so paramount to that first interaction because oftentimes, and we see this, that is our first place of research. It is going to Google, going to Bing, going wherever we might go beyond getting information from our friends to see what's happening there. And that's why those Google reviews and how you rank in that are so critically important because that's their first line of defense there. So assuming they get into and call your business now that they've done their due diligence. Now you want to make sure that you're capturing anything that's happening in that first interaction. That's such a critical touch point for you. I think that is one of those that, a lot of people don't really think about many times because that's really where the meat of it is. Obviously, as we mentioned earlier, sentiment is one of those things that's going to reveal that customer emotion. But the key thing to look at after that is what is the view of the business? How did the agent or CSR handle that? And being able to monitor that along the way and adjust, right? And then certainly, if they engage with your business and use your services, then now they're a customer. And so you want to continue to track those things along the way. Are you doing some annual service or regularity of cadence of service to that customer? And so you want to make sure every one of those touch points is monitored along the way. And that's why sentiment and AI is so critically important these days, is you have the ability to do that. And then, thinking about lifecycle management in general, it's so paramount to make sure that, number one, you retain those customers over a long period of time and keep them happy. So you always want to kind of be monitoring those things. And then, there is the idea of review fatigue. And so we need to have a balance of like, hey, when do we push, our customers to provide those reviews? So really balancing those strategies is going to be critical for you. We focused a lot of our conversations, and I think that's where the meat of everything is on negative sentiment. Obviously, we can uncover the opportunities there, but I want to touch on positive sentiment and why it's so critically important for businesses. First, you want to focus on the positive, amplify the success, use it as a training opportunity. We know this. Happier employees stay longer, and that when it's hard to retain employees over time, that's something you want to celebrate them, and that's why I say reward people in your organization. So being able to unearth some of that is going to be key. Certainly boosting your online reputation is key, and then you want to build out some automation around that. Hey, when I'm seeing positive sentiment, it's great to ask for that customer's feedback so that you can continually add that in there. Again, this helps boost your reviews and your SEO ranking, so that's pretty key information there. And then, acting on diagnostic insights. Sentiment can provide a number of structured results that allow you to filter the information, being able to dig into that at a brand level, a location level, or CSR agent level. Those are all important things. And then how do you correlate that with the rest of the data that you're receiving to really make those and fine tune those improvements over time? And then from a marketing standpoint, I think what's really critical here is, what you want to look at is what customers value most in your service as a part of that sentiment analysis and leveraging that in your messaging that you're using on the front side of your marketing efforts to really drive people in, because that's what's successful. If people are saying it on the phone, let's amplify that. Let's push that across your channels and to help drive better experiences overall. And then get instant feedback on promotion. So one interesting thing, we work with a generator company that had a really great promotion in place, but what ended up happening, they thought they had trained all of their individuals across the organization, and very quickly and easily through sentiment analysis, they were able to see that there were some pricing discrepancies and challenges there that some of their CSRs hadn't been trained up. And so that helped to really quickly give them the ability to make that augmentation and adjust there, and then train those individuals appropriately. And then, certainly this is the most obvious part of it. Let's take advantage of those training opportunities. There's the positive side of this, and let's say celebrate, hey, here's what we want to do more of. Make it a weekly thing, talk about the best calls of the week. Obviously, there's negative information in there, and use that as a positive building experience as well to say, hey, we all make mistakes. We understand that. Let's just learn from those mistakes and grow from there. So I think those are some really critical things. I know we're coming up on time, so I want to use a little time left to answer any questions. Please feel free to submit those through the Q&A if you have any. Just a shameless plug for Marchex. We are a leading AI-powered conversation analytics for your industry. We work across multiple industries like automotive, home services, healthcare, and many more. We are a publicly traded company. We work with over 1,200 brands. And we've processed over 1 billion minutes annually of conversation data. And why is that important? I think there are a lot of solutions out there that provide sort of a universal AI sentiment solution. Ours, I think we really like to focus in within our vertical subsets as well, making sure that there's a lot of data to unearth that is specific to that vertical or industry, and even within their sub verticals there as well, I think is critical. And then lastly, we have a ton of great experience working with many large brands, specifically even within the IFA, as you can see here. We worked with all shapes and sizes across the board, small businesses to mid-market to the enterprise level. So, we're happy to have any conversations with anyone and have a ton of experience in all of these areas, as you can see. Last poll, how would you rate your organization's ability to monitor and respond to customer feedback? So, needs improvement, mid, as my daughters would say, and or excellent. So, love to hear your response there to really kind of take that honest assessment of where you feel you're at. So it'll be good to see that. All right, I think we've had the time to do that. So why don't we get those results? All right, so it looks like mid. I think people like the mid. So all needs improvement. I love the honesty on this one. Hey, great for those of you who are at the excellent. So good to hear that. Thanks for the feedback on all of that. I know this has been a short session, but I want to make sure that you guys have all the information you need. We are providing a link here that we're going to share in the chat as well. So you can download this report that we've been discussing as a part of this conversation. If you're interested in some of the sentiment solutions that we've discussed today, feel free to reach out, whether it's through the 800 number or through our website, marchex.com. Really easy to get in touch with us. We'd love to have a conversation, learn more about your business to see where we can make a meaningful impact. And then I'm going to start just kind of going through some of the questions. If you have any, make sure you add them into the Q&A. Happy to answer those. So appreciate the time and the questions in there. So let's take the first question. Looks like, how can franchises balance managing reviews across multiple locations? Great question. So I think really the key here is there's a ton of data to unpack as a part of our sentiment analysis, certainly. This can be down to a brand level. So you could get an overarching view. If you have multiple brands within your organization, you can look at it from kind of an overarching view, or you can get down to a brand level or a location level, and then even as tactical as an agent level as well. I think there's a lot of ways that you could slice and dice the information. The great news is we're providing not only structured, but we're providing unstructured data as well. That structured data really allows you to help to kind of filter and focus on that information along with like some of the summaries. So you're not listening to a whole bunch of calls, you're getting that information quickly. Anything to add there, Alex?
Yeah, no, I just say that like it's the beauty of sentiment analysis is its ability to do what you just said. You can segment according to a variety of different filters or levels. You could go all the way down to if you have, for instance, if you have a franchise, you can do it by location, but you can also do it geographically by region, or you could do it down even to an individual CSR. You could do it by agent. So the flexibility to do that and be able to really benchmark internally is incredibly valuable. And that's really what we recommend our own customers to use it for, is to be able to look at it internally and benchmark so that you can identify leading, lagging, and just baseline performance.
Yeah. There's another question. I know we're right up on time, so for those of you who can stay, we'll stay an extra minute longer. What is the ROI of investing in sentiment analysis tools for franchise operations? Yeah, this is great. So a couple of things. One, the real importance here to know is this sentiment solution is across all of your calls, right? If you choose to put it across all your calls. That's one thing. So, when we talked about this earlier, it only, surveys are getting about 30 to 40% respondents, and we don't know the type of response that they're getting there. But I want to really hammer this point home. It's an anecdote from a customer who is experiencing, who is leveraging our sentiment solution. And they're an HVAC company. They saw that they had a negative CSAT score. It was a low CSAT score and a customer negative view of the business. They dug into that. They started looking at the summary of that information. What they uncovered is that the customer was asking, and this is the structured output price or billing issue. And what she said was, hey, why am I getting a bill for a couple $100 when I've already paid your technician $1,000? And what they ended up finding out is that unfortunately that technician had fraudulently requested that paycheck in his name, or that check in his name. But the good news is that this sentiment analysis unearthed that. They obviously handled that situation with that employee. I'm sure he's no longer employed there and may have other issues challenging around that, but that one to me really stood out the most in helping to save their business from that happening repeated times. There's many other anecdotes like this. I don't know, Alex, do you have any others?
Yeah. When I was leading the Sentiment Suite early adopter program earlier this year, one really fascinating instance was one of our early adopters began to notice a trend of low, we call it CSAT. They had low performing agents with low CSAT scores, and just overall, whenever they were interacting with customers, more often than not, they were suffering from agent knowledge gaps. And they were able to identify that these agents were actually coming from an overflow third-party call center. And so, this early adopter had implemented that third-party call center with the idea, the presumption that when they were short-staffed with in-house CSRs and in-house agents, they could forward these calls to the overflow call center and still be able to answer calls and hopefully still be able to derive business even when they were short-staffed. But ironically, it was actually in a way negative impacting their business, because now these callers were being forwarded to agents that knew little to nothing about their business. They're third party, they're outsourced, and so that was a key. That's a key example of how sentiment analysis, in a way, helped them save money, because I doubt they're still using that overflow third party call center. They were able to identify this unnecessary cost and just kind of actually prove the benefit of how valuable is it really to answer a call if you're not really able to actually help them in the first place.
Yeah. Well, I know we've gone over time, so appreciate everybody joining us for this webinar. I would just like to say a heartfelt thank you from us at Marchex. Certainly, if you have any questions, we're happy to answer those and dig in with you guys further. Again, thank you so much for taking the time today. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lee and Alex. This was excellent content and excellent feedback from all of you. We really do appreciate it. Again, this webinar was recorded, and along with the presentation deck will appear on our website early this evening. You'll be able to find that at community.franchise.org. Thank you very much again to our speakers and to the Marchex team. And again, thank you to everyone for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and healthy. Bye.
Thank you.